everyone. Welcome to our video. So a lot of you know me already. I'm Erin Ellis, and I teach cello and the string pedagogy course over at West Virginia University. And I'm joined today by one of my favorite colleagues.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be able to collaborate with Dr. Ellis. My name is Lisa Caravan. I'm the assistant professor of music teaching and learning at the Eastman School of Music. The courses I mainly teach are string specific in the music education field, and I teach 2-semester sequence in string pedagogy. So today we're really excited to bring to you our list of top 10 cello teaching tips that we thought might highlight some areas in which perhaps our students have fallen a little short in terms of posture, positions on left and right, and give you very short little exercises that perhaps you could incorporate in your own maybe private studio or in your classroom. So we hope that there's a nugget in here that you can take away to bring to your students.
Awesome, right? And we should also mention that you have significant public school teaching experience in an orchestra setting.
Yeah, I taught in public school in the Rochester area for 6 years. So I was fortunate, to be in a job where I taught all cello and basses from grades 4 through 9. So I was in 6 buildings, but I really got to see the progression of students and get to know them so well during that period.
Right. So basically we're just a couple of cello nerds, so let's get going. So the first tip is about kind of foundational setup and posture. I wanted to highlight one kind of set of rules that I follow when setting students up, and then show you a couple of areas that we typically have to troubleshoot. So there are basically only 3 ways to adjust the cello only. This way, forwards and backwards. You can take the end pin up and down, and then you can take the end pin side to side, and that's basically it. And the 2 areas of troubleshooting that I want to highlight today are what I call either sleeping scroll or gorilla cello. And that is essentially, sometimes it's in conjunction with the end pin being too long or too short, but more often than not, that student is just holding the cello too tall like this, or letting the cello rest like that. And a lot of times that is because they're very uncomfortable with the peg being right at their ear. So the solution to that oftentimes is a surprise. It's actually the diagonal. So if your student's neck is being weird, or you just can't seem to find the right position to fit that peg comfortably, a lot of times you just take the end pin and go a couple inches over to the to the right, and it really solves the problem. So that's a typical problem that I see in my own students, and also those of that are just starting out. Okay, so the second teaching tip is about a problem that we all love: squeezing left thumbs. Yeah, exactly. We love that, right? It happens more often than not in the low strings, and I see that a lot when I'm teaching string pedagogy, low strings. So the first idea that I want to reinforce is that you have to have good posture. Otherwise, that's why the student is hanging onto the cello, because their cello or bass is not situated between their knees or situated on their hip. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that we really want to make sure that we can play without our thumb successfully, that we're not relying on the thumb. So I call it the tucking thumb. And instead of, a lot of times when students play without their thumb, they hold it out like here. This is actually just as tension filled, in my opinion, as the squeeze. So I actually have them tuck it in, and that can really help shine a light on some of that tension that they're holding. Another quick exercise with the thumb tucked is trampolines, where we're not just focused on getting the string down like this, but we're actually trying to feel pull from the back like this, okay? So we want to be careful that we're not doing this, that we're actually using the arm. And that can help teach the student to not rely on their thumb to get the string down. And then the final one that I'm going to talk about before I turn it over to my colleague is something I call the explorer finger in the left hand. She's nodding her head, yes.
I have to interrupt. I use this one all the time.
Yeah, and this is something that I think is very specific to cello and bass, in that our notes are just far enough apart that it's actually uncomfortable and leaves your hand with a lot of tension if you try to have your fingers in exactly the right spot all of the time. So we need to be a lot more flexible with how we're moving our fingers. And in my notes here, I have a reminder, although I think our students are too young to understand this reference, but remember in the Friends episode where Chandler plays the video game too long and he comes out with the claw? It's like that. That's what I see. So basically the rule is that if you're playing fourth finger or third finger and you need to play first finger, the first finger needs to move back while you're playing that, and then you can lift that. So I do a lot of just having students put their fourth finger down and just go for little explorer finger journeys like this. And this is like a mini extension, right? So if they can do this well, extensions are not going to be a problem. And then the trick is when they're playing is to let it move. Instead of, we do not want to see, because that results in some chunky playing, and that's not really, that's actually a shift instead of just a note in position. So again, when you're playing a third finger, that first finger has to move back. Okay, all mine for right now.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Do you have them slide it up so it's in contact with the string the whole time? Do you sometimes take it off? Like, I'm just clarification question for me.
I never take it off. That's a great point. So it's always a slide. It's always a slide. It's never heavy though. So sometimes we talk about taking a nap and just sliding off to sleep or something like that. But I do find that if we can put weight in the fourth finger, it makes your thumb is free. And then see, I'm even moving my thumb a little bit occasionally. That also happens. So there's not a set hand shape. I think that's the most important thing I want to get across, is that there's not a set hand shape and you're good to go. It does have to be a lot more flexible in the low strings than in the upper strings.
Yeah, and that's one word we want to keep highlighting throughout, is this idea of flexibility. And obviously we've talked a lot about the thumb joint and the thumb, but also our fingers. And when we go through the bow hold, we're going to highlight that as well. So I'm going to talk about two issues that are related to shifting in general. So I'm going to get back to that idea of the locked thumb, because a lot of my students sometimes try to shift and they leave the thumb behind. I mean, I don't know, Dr. Ellis, do you have students that do that?
No, yeah, of course, every single one of them.
So one of the things that I've been recently stressing with my students is that we always, want to shift as though we're changing from position to position. It's never just we're shifting really with one note, right? So I have some students that want to shift like this. And if they do that into fourth position and they put their fingers really close together, I know that they're already going to be out of tune. So I try to really get the point across that our thumb is a guide, as a guiding finger, and I call it a finger in this case, but it's guiding us from position to position. And the thing is that, the thumb, again, just like she was talking about, her first finger doesn't leave the string, the thumb does not leave the neck like this from position to position. Oops, right? It doesn't hop. We want it to glide. Sometimes I call it the elevator down, elevator up. But the other day I was calling it, actually just yesterday, I was calling it it was traveling from position to position. And that seemed to really connect with my student. So I was asking her, well, when we shift from an open string, right? And if I want to shift and do a finger replacement shift to my first finger during the open string, who's the travel finger? And she's like, what? And she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so then I was like, well, it's our thumb. It glides us there. And so this is a really important reason not to have a locked thumb, because that's what guides us to that new position. So check out everybody's thumbs. Do a little elevator down, elevator up exercise just to get it moving. And I'm going to segue right into the next point, which is this freedom and shifting that we need. Our thumb is a part of that, but also our elbow and arm. So a lot of the times what I have seen is that our arm is not prepared for the shift. So we call this the unprepared arm. And what happens is that we end up moving this part first. And do you see how my arm has been left behind? And actually, guess what? Who else has been left behind again? The thumb, right? So there's things that I like to think about and talk with my students where we really focus on the shape of their whole arm. This one teacher trainer, Pam Davenport, who I love so much, called about the elbow, wrist, pinky. And I have my students do this to show the different levels, right? But we want it to be, again, a sort of a unit, not a static unit and not a statue, but it's a unit that moves together, okay? And so what we like to do is we like to do these, I think both Dr. Ellis and I do these double pumps, okay? And the double pump is we're going to have their arm pumped twice in preparation, and then we're going to throw the arm, and the hand and thumb are going to follow. So we do this quite a bit. I have my students do this a lot without ever playing a note first. I have them double, and then I have them go, right? Double, and then we go backwards, okay? And the motion of swinging the arm around goes forward, and then it has to go the backwards way when you come back. So I really suggest you think about just releasing that arm a couple times. You could do it with scales. I was doing this with my student the other day where I was really trying to get her to go from 4 to back here. And again, she was hopping on the way back. So she needed a guide finger. And in this case, the guiding finger was the first finger. So again, just really watch out for that hand, for that thumb, and for the whole arm that's helping you to prepare your shifts so they sound cleaner and so they're more accurate. They will be more accurate, I promise, okay? The next thing I wanna talk about is the dreaded extensions. If you have a C sharp on the G string, they might be a little bit flat. Now, we're both really passionate about this. So Dr. Ellis might say something too, because we're obsessed with extensions, right? And so there's two types of extensions, okay? There's a forwards and a backwards, right? The backwards extension is so nice and easy. All you do is point up that first finger, then you get it back. And I do this on the bow, so I can just see, and they can tell me, I ask them, where is your thumb? What finger is it behind? And hopefully they're telling me too. And if they're not, we find that out. Now, the forward extension is a little bit more complicated, okay? Because again, thumb and second finger stay together. That's really helpful, Dr. Ellis, to show that. Thank you. So now what we're gonna do is we're actually going to, this is actually what I do. I first asked them to do this motion where they just pivot and get used to that feeling. I didn't used to do that before, but now I do this because I want them to understand that they have to actually drop the elbow and then open 2, 3, and 4. And guess what? Thumb is with second finger. So again, I do this pivot exercise and then I have them open. So just so we're really clear, the extension motion happens between first and second finger.
Yes, I think maybe let me interrupt and clarify that in music, it might be written 1x2. We all know what that means, but sometimes it says 1x4. Let's say you're going E to G sharp. That doesn't mean that we leave all these 3 fingers behind and extend the 4th finger. That actually means that we have a silent extension between 1 and 2. So there's one rule in cello playing that I can think of, maybe one example that we break one time, but it's that there's never a whole step between 3 and 4 ever, period, full stop. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. It's really helpful. I do an exercise with my students so they can get the feeling, called the banana exercise. And so I take my kind of pincher, I like the pincher, and I grab them together, okay? And then I say, oh, like, it's like a bananas. If you have more bananas here, they're gonna drop, right? Well, let's see how far they drop. If you have thumb and you've got your pincher, right? Let's try to drop that and see how far these 3 bananas go. Let's see how far it goes. How far? Oh, okay, it goes kind of. Now just pinch your first finger. So no thumb this time. Now try to open, like, see what happens. Oh, wait, I go so much farther. Why do I go farther, Dr. Ellis?
Because the thumb follows 2 and 3 and 4. This is loose thumb.
Yeah, so we can talk about extensions probably for a half hour, but we won't. But we want you to take away that the thumb and second finger really have to be together in order for it to work, and the dropping of the arm, right? We don't want to see that, and it's not comfortable for the students or for us. So thank you. Yeah, so I'm gonna put it back to Dr.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see, we're on teaching point number 7 now, apparently, according to my notes. But that is, let's talk about vibrato. So vibrato can be such a tricky thing to teach because of course, it's a more advanced technique. And I would say that that's one of the areas that is most different between upper and lower strings. And so one of the things that I think most modern cello teachers do now is they teach a shifting vibrato. Now, what I mean by that is that we're actually moving the hand like this, but we're staying in place. So the motion is this, okay? So to be a little bit, philosophical, vibrato is a shift that stays in one place. But the contrast to that I often see and that we work to correct is what we call the doorknob vibrato, which is a rotational vibrato. Now, this is not necessarily totally wrong, but what that is it's a very limiting vibrato. You'll get the student to vibrate. They will vibrate, but they will have one vibrato and one vibrato only. And if we're trying to really teach long-term artists here, we want to think a little bit more long-term than that. And that's why I teach the shifting vibrato. So let me show you how I teach that. This is really nice if you've got kids in your class, you want to do scales. The cellos can do this exercise while the other students are doing scales. Quarter note equals 60, light fingers, D string, and we actually get to hit the side of our cello. It's quite exciting. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we do 2 taps. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 4, and then 3 taps. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, and then 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're feeling fancy, you can try 6, but let me tell you, 4 is probably as much as you want. So then back on the instrument, I'll use third finger. Sometimes if you're in a private lesson situation, you can put your finger there for them to sort of tap against. But obviously in the classroom, this is not going to work. But you go 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, tap, 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 tap. So I hope that you can see that what I'm doing in this vibrato is not that. Okay, so it's a very subtle difference, but actually it's not that hard to teach if you teach it that way. So that's what I love about teaching a shifting vibrato. So that's I have a million other exercises with that. So please feel free to reach out to me if you want some more information on that. But the shifting vibrato is a very important step in a young cellist's life.
So we're going to go on to number 8. So we're going to talk a little bit about the path of the bow arm, and in conjunction with the fact that it sometimes seems really hard to keep a straight bow, perpendicular on the string. Now, there's many things things that go with this, right? If the bow angle isn't quite set up right when you put the bow on the string, that can affect how your bow starts, right? If I pull the bow across the string like this, my bow is going to be crooked. If I open up too much my arm, oh, look what happens. My bow is crooked again. So what do we do with this? Okay. So one thing that I really like to get my students to feel and teach, and I've finally come up with this saying that is working for me. The first thing I have them do is I actually have them take the cello away from the situation to make it a little bit more simpler, so we can figure out what the motion is that we need for the arm. So the first thing is I have them kind of flop their arm, and I have their arm pretty close actually to their body, okay? And the first thing I actually have them do is I have them go up. And I say, you're airing out your armpit, okay? And I put it back. Some people don't like saying that, but I do, okay? Okay, so this is the first thing. I have them go up, and then I say, what comes up must come down. And I'll be really honest, the down is the hardest, I think, part, okay, to when we put it on the string in particular. So I have them do this a lot. Up, what comes down. Now, I add something else. I have them go up, and I have them go out, and then I have them go back in, and then what comes up must come down, okay? So if we're upper string, right, violinist or violist, we do a lot of this out and in, open and close the gate with elbow. The elbow is a hinge, and we have more hinges, right? But let's concentrate on that motion. Cellists do that motion. It's just when their bow is going from the middle to the tip. So what comes up, out, in, must come down, okay? And so I want them to get used to that. I want them to get more fluid with it. I'm showing in a very robotic way right now, and I realize that. But I want them to be able to segment the arm, okay? So then I actually have them put it on the string, okay? So what comes up, out, in, must come down, right? So I have them, I'll be honest, I kind of skipped a step because I wanted to show you the whole thing, but I have them just do this for a long time. I have them do this for a long time because, again, I'll reiterate, the coming down is the harder of the two, okay? Because I see a lot of students that do this and then they stay like this. And then I'm just like, does your arm hurt? It would seem to me that it would hurt. And maybe it doesn't hurt a beginner, but as they get older and older and older, like our age, we can't hold on to that. And then we have, I don't know, shoulder problems and arm problems. So really, I would really encourage you to work on this stroke, and then you can make it more fluid as you go. And obviously, if you put it on another string, the angle is different. And they have to learn another position kind of what it feels like to be in those. But I do start on the D, and then I go to the G. The two middle strings, I think, are happier places for our bow and bow arm than the A and the C. So it's something to consider as we talk about that. We're going to go into number 9 now, which is I'm going to talk about a little bit about the bow hold, and then Dr. Ellis will continue. We have an issue that kind of comes up a lot, and it has to do with how we put the hand on the bow and what direction it goes. And what I mean by that is we sometimes see our cellists doing this, and I would call that the crushing, okay? Crush, right? We want to really make sure if I do that on the bow, or string, excuse me, that's what it looks like. And they feel so, they like it. You know why? Because they feel like they have more control. right? Because they're holding actually the stick at this point. But we know we want flexibility in all of this to really create those smooth bow changes. So we have to really consider that we need to actually pronate the whole hand going towards the first finger more. Okay. Yeah. So look at that. If we set up this way, we want to rotate the arm, and I like to say pour. Sometimes I actually have my students come from above and then I have them add fingers. I don't always do that, but sometimes if I know they're really having a hard time, I have them touch with the first finger first and then add the thumb at the end. So that's just an idea to get that pronation. And honestly, that helps our tone, right? Because we're directing all that weight into the first and second fingers instead of letting the weight just pour out of the pinky into the ground. Okay, so pronating that bow hold. Some people put the pinky on top, like violinists and violists, is a little trick. And sometimes, actually, I had to do that in graduate school because I had a problem too. Okay, yeah, confessions, right? And because I have a very short pinky, that's the other reason for me. So I sometimes do that. But really watch those bow holds in terms of pronation. Dr. Ellis.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just kind of piggybacking onto that, we come to our 10th teaching tip today, which is really just clarifying what we feel like is the best way to actually place the fingers on the bow. And a lot of strings teachers are not cellists, and they're setting up cellists and basses with their French bow hold. So I just wanted to clarify what I tend to see a lot. And the first thing is that the thumb, while it should be curved on some level. Now, if you have a very long thumbed person, this is going to look a little bit different. But one thing that most likely should not happen, it should not touch the hair. And that's very different than fiddles, where you guys, fiddles, they hold it a little bit here, whereas we're holding it a little bit more on the side, okay? And then they curl under like this, okay? That's not really going to work that well for this pronation. Yeah.
Can I just jump in? The reason why it touches, right, for us violins and violas is because you're tilting the stick, the stick of the bow towards the scroll. So when we turn that, it comes in contact with our thumb. But when we're on cello, as she's going to talk about, we are actually tilting the stick, right, towards the scroll again, but it actually takes us farther away from the hair. So I just wanted to throw that in. Thank you, Dr.
That's a great tip, actually. So that's the first thing that I see a lot. The other thing is that the second finger here, oftentimes on fiddles, that sits on top of the ferrule, right? Or sometimes it's third finger, just depending on whatever teaching method you want to do. But really, I have the analogy that I want that to touch in the palm of my finger, meaning the center of your finger, rather than sitting on top of the ferrule or the frog, because then we get this beautiful violin bow hold. Oh, gorge, right? But it doesn't work. It doesn't work on the cello. I'm sorry to say, it just it doesn't, because then it negates sort of the arm weight that we need, and we have to go against gravity. So those are the two. I said two things that we really want to watch out for there. Did you want to add something?
No, I would just one thing that I think about with the thumb that has helped me in describing it is where I place my thumb on the bow. A lot of the times, the students hear, "Oh, put the thumb on the bow," which I've totally done this, okay? And they put more of the pad of their thumb and like in the center, right? So what ends up happening is they have a banana thumb, right? There's not flexibility in that. But I wasn't being specific enough in my own, in my own teaching to really show that the thumb is actually coming from this direction and is just stopped by that tip of the nose of the frog, which is what I call it. And so sometimes I do this with my students because that gets my pronation too, if I go from that direction.
That's a great idea. Yeah. And so the last thing I kind of wanted to show was I have this exercise called finger taps and doorbell thumbs, and I make all the college kids do it, and we have a good time. But the first thing is you want to tap your first finger, then you tap your pinky, then your middle two fingers together, and then we check to see if we have a doorbell. Ding dong. And it doesn't work without the sound effect, scientifically proven. So ding dong. And I find that that's actually kind of a fun way to just release some tension and remind your students of where their cello fingers go, as opposed to their violin counterparts, where their fingers go. So that's a great one to do across the classroom. And it just kind of resets that muscle memory that you've so lovingly taught them, and that sometimes when they get to reading music, they forget. So.
And if they're really young, I would just suggest supporting it, right? We're showing it because of the camera kind of where we need to, but doing that on the knee is really helpful. A little older, they can handle it just in front, but it's the sequencing that we have to think about. Those young kids, they don't know what to do with these limbs yet, and they don't have the strength.
Bows are heavy, so the cello bows and the bass bows are very heavy, so that's important. Well, I think we've come to the end of our presentation, but listen, everyone, if you have questions or you want to chat with us a little bit more, please feel free to email us. We're very easy to find on the internet. And I know we'd be happy to chat with you. And so, yeah, it was great making this video for you, and I hope you've enjoyed it. So we'll see you later.